In 1945, a 27-year-old farm boy walked into a failing variety store in Newport, Arkansas. He had $5,000 of his own money, a $20,000 loan from his father-in-law, and absolutely no experience running a retail business. His previous employer, a regional auditor at J.C. Penney, had looked at his sloppy paperwork and delivered a verdict that would echo through business history. "Walton, I'd fire you if you weren't such a good salesman. Maybe you're just not cut out for retail." This was 1945. Discount stores as we know them didn't exist. The idea of putting large retailers in small towns seemed absurd to anyone who understood the economics. Rural America was supposed to drive to the city for anything beyond basic necessities. That was simply how things worked. This farm boy didn't care what was supposed to happen. Over the next 4 decades, he would build a company that today generates more revenue than the GDP of Belgium, Sweden, and Poland combined. His stores employ more people than the entire population of Houston, Dallas, and San Antonio put together. His family now controls more wealth than any other family in human history, more than the Rothschilds ever accumulated, more than the Rockefellers at their peak. That farm boy was Sam Walton, and his company, Walmart, would transform American retail, hollow out Main Street in thousands of small towns, spark labor controversies that continue to this day, and make the phrase "everyday low prices" both a promise and a warning. This is that story, the depression that made him. To understand Sam Walton, you have to understand what he watched his father do during the darkest years of the Great Depression. Samuel Moore Walton was born on March 29, 1918, in Kingfisher, Oklahoma, a small farming town about 40 miles northwest of Oklahoma City. His parents, Thomas Gibson Walton and Nancy Lee Lawrence, scraped by on a farm that barely produced enough to feed the family. When the Depression hit, the farm went under. Thomas Walton was desperate. He took the only job he could find, working for his brother's mortgage company, servicing old farm loans for Metropolitan Life Insurance. The job title sounds boring. The reality was devastating. Thomas Walton became the man who knocked on doors and told families they had to leave their land. He repossessed farms from people who had worked the same soil for generations. These weren't strangers in some distant city. These were neighbors, friends, people Thomas had known his entire life, people whose children played with his children. Sam Walton later wrote about watching his father do this work. Dad became the guy who had to service Metropolitan's old farm loans, most of which were in default. In 1929 and 1930 and 1931, he had to repossess hundreds of farms from wonderful people whose families had owned the land forever. Imagine being a young boy watching your father take away everything from families just like yours, watching children lose their homes, watching grown men cry, watching the shame and the desperation. Something hardened inside Sam Walton during those years. He developed an obsession with 2 things that would define his entire life. First, making money. As much money as possible, so that no one could ever do to him what his father had been forced to do to others. And second, never wasting a single cent of it, because waste was what destroyed those families. Waste and debt and the inability to survive when the world turned against you. By the time Sam was 7 or 8 years old, he was already running his first businesses. He sold magazine subscriptions door to door, walking miles through rural Missouri to find customers. He delivered newspapers before school, rain or shine. He milked the family cow and bottled the surplus to sell to neighbors. He raised rabbits and pigeons, then slaughtered them and sold the meat. While other children played, Sam Walton was learning the fundamentals of commerce. Buy low, sell fair, work harder than anyone else, never stop hustling. In 8th grade, he became the youngest Eagle Scout in Missouri history. It wasn't enough to join the Scouts. He had to be the best. He had to reach the top faster than anyone before him. The family moved several times during Sam's childhood, following Thomas's work across Missouri. They eventually settled in Columbia, home of the University of Missouri. Sam attended Hickman High School, where he quarterbacked the football team and was voted most versatile boy by his classmates. But it was at the University of Missouri where Sam's entrepreneurial instincts exploded into something bigger. He took over a newspaper delivery route for the Columbia Daily Tribune. Within months, he had expanded it. He hired other students to work for him, managing multiple routes across the city. He wasn't just delivering papers anymore. He was running a small logistics operation. By his senior year, this college kid was earning $4,000 to $5,000 annually from his delivery business. In 1940 money, adjusting for inflation, that's roughly equivalent to $80,000 to $100,000 today. Sam Walton was making six figures before he had a diploma. He graduated with a bachelor's degree in economics, but the real education had happened on those newspaper routes. He had learned how to manage people, how to optimize delivery times, how to squeeze profit out of every possible inefficiency, how to scale a small operation into a bigger one. 3 days after graduation, on June 3rd, 1940, Sam Walton started his first corporate job. He became a management trainee at the J.C. Penney store in Des Moines, Iowa. His salary was $75 per month. Not cut out for retail, the J.C. Penney management training program was legendary in retail circles. The company was known for developing talent, and the Des Moines store was run by Duncan Majors, a manager famous for producing future executives. Sam threw himself into the work. He learned store operations, customer service, inventory management, and the Penney way of doing business. He even met the founder himself, James Cash Penney, who visited the store and personally taught Sam efficient techniques for wrapping packages. But Sam had a problem. He was terrible at paperwork. His books were a mess. His records were incomplete. He was brilliant with customers, natural at selling, but he treated administrative work like an afterthought. A regional auditor named Phil Blake reviewed Sam's work and delivered the assessment that would haunt and motivate Sam for decades. "Walton, I'd fire you if you weren't such a good salesman. Maybe you're just not cut out for retail." Not cut out for retail. The man who would build the largest retailer in history was told to his face that he should probably find another line of work. Years later, when Phil Blake heard about a successful retailer named Sam Walton dominating the Arkansas market, he reportedly couldn't believe it. "It can't be the same Sam Walton I met in Des Moines," Blake said. "That fellow could not have amounted to anything." Sam resigned from J.C. Penney in early 1942, anticipating his World War II draft notice. When the army examined him, they found a minor heart irregularity that prevented him from combat deployment. Instead of fighting overseas, Captain Sam Walton spent the war supervising security at aircraft plants and prisoner-of-war camps, stationed primarily at Fort Douglas in Salt Lake City. But Sam didn't waste the war years. While other soldiers killed time between shifts, Sam spent his off-duty hours in the base library. He read every book on retailing he could find. He studied merchandising, pricing, store layouts, and customer psychology. He was preparing for something, though he didn't yet know exactly what. The war also brought him something more valuable than any book. In April 1942, while working at a DuPont munitions plant near Tulsa, Oklahoma, Sam went bowling one evening. A young woman named Helen Robson was there, on a date with another man. Sam didn't care that she was with someone else. He introduced himself anyway. Helen was the daughter of L.S. Robson, a prosperous banker, rancher, and attorney from Claremore, Oklahoma. She was educated, refined, and came from money. They were married on Valentine's Day, February 14th, 1943. Sam Walton had found a partner, and more importantly for his future business plans, he had found a father-in-law with capital. Newport and the lesson that changed everything. When the war ended, Sam was ready to start his real life. He wanted to own a store. His father-in-law, L.S. Robson, believed in him enough to write a check. Sam put in $5,000 of his own savings. L.S. Robson loaned him $20,000 more. With this $25,000, roughly $400,000 in today's money, Sam Walton bought a Ben Franklin variety store franchise in Newport, Arkansas. Newport was a small town of about 7,000 people in the northeastern corner of the state. The store Sam bought was a disaster. It had the lowest sales in the region and the highest rent in the entire industry. The lease required Sam to pay 5% of all sales to the landlord, a man named P.K. Holmes. The previous owner had run the business into the ground. Sam had never actually managed a store before. He had trained at J.C. Penney, sure, but training and owning are different things. He was 27 years old, had a wife, and soon a growing family to support, and had just sunk every dollar he had into a failing business in rural Arkansas. Most people would have followed the rules, played it safe, done what the franchise agreement told them to do. Sam Walton was not most people. The Ben Franklin franchise system was designed to control its franchisees, Store owners were supposed to buy most of their merchandise from Butler Brothers, the company's wholesale arm. Butler Brothers charged a 25% markup on everything. This was how the franchise made its real money, not from franchise fees, but from being the mandatory supplier. Sam looked at that 25% markup and saw waste, pure, unnecessary waste that he could eliminate. At night after the store closed, Sam would drive for hours into the mountains of Tennessee. He sought out obscure wholesalers who operated outside the normal supply chains. He found manufacturers willing to sell directly to a small store owner if the price was right. He filled his homemade trailer with merchandise, men's shirts, ladies' underwear, household goods, whatever he could find at rock-bottom prices. Then he brought those items back to Newport and sold them at prices his competitors couldn't match. Here's an example that shows how Sam thought. Ben Franklin required franchisees to buy women's panties from Butler Brothers at $2.50 per dozen. Sam found a supplier who would sell him the same panties for $2 per dozen. His competitors sold 3 panties for $1. Sam sold 4 for $1. Same profit margin per panty, but Sam sold 3 times as many. More profit overall, plus customers who came back because they knew Sam's store had the best prices. This was the core insight that would eventually build Walmart. The conventional wisdom said you maximize profit by charging the highest price customers would tolerate. Sam asked a different question. What if you made less money per item, but sold vastly more items? What if volume could replace margin? The math was simple but radical. If Sam bought something for 80 cents and sold it for $1 instead of the standard $1.20, he might triple his sales. Each sale made less money, but the total profit was higher because he was selling so much more. Customers noticed. Word spread through Newport that this new store owner was practically giving things away. The store got busier, and busier, and busier. Within his first year, Sam increased sales by 45%. The store went from $72,000 in annual revenue to over $100,000. By his second year, sales hit $140,000. By his 5th year, Sam had transformed the worst Ben Franklin in the region into the best, generating $250,000 annually. It was the #1 store in a 6-state area. Sam repaid his father-in-law's loan in just 30 months. And then he lost everything. His landlord, P.K. Holmes, refused to renew the lease. It didn't matter what price Sam offered. Holmes had watched this young hotshot turn a failing store into a gold mine, and he wanted that gold mine for his own son. Sam had made a catastrophic mistake when he signed the original lease. He had neglected to include a renewal clause. 1 missing sentence, 1 legal oversight, and 5 years of backbreaking work evaporated. Sam later called it the lowest point of his entire life. "It was the low point of my life," he wrote. "I felt sick to my stomach. I couldn't believe it was happening to me. It really was like a nightmare. I had built the best variety store in the whole region and worked hard in the community, done everything right, and now I was being kicked out of town. It didn't seem fair." He had to sell the store, the inventory, the fixtures, everything, to the landlord's son. All that work, all that innovation, all those customers he had built relationships with. Gone. But Sam Walton wasn't the kind of man who stayed down. He took his family, now including 4 young children, and went looking for another opportunity. He found it in Bentonville, Arkansas, and this time he insisted on a 99-year lease. Bentonville and the 99-year lease. Helen Walton set one condition for their new home: no towns larger than 10,000 people. She had grown up in a small town and wanted to raise her children the same way. Sam agreed, partly because he loved Helen and partly because he had discovered that small towns had less competition. Sam also wanted good quail hunting. Arkansas offered access to 4 different states' hunting seasons within easy driving distance. Bentonville, a town of about 3,000 people in the far northwest corner of the state, fit both criteria perfectly, but securing the location nearly fell apart. Sam found an existing business, the Harrison Variety Store on the town square, that he could purchase. The problem was that the store was too small for his ambitions. He needed to lease the adjacent shop to expand, and the owner refused. 6 times Sam asked. 6 times the owner said no. Sam was ready to give up on Bentonville entirely. Then his father-in-law intervened. Without telling Sam, L.S. Robson went to visit the stubborn shop owner. When Robson left, he had secured the lease. The price was $20,000. Sam never forgot that his father-in-law had believed in him enough to pay it. Walton's 5 and 10 opened on May 9, 1950. Sam immediately started looking for innovations he could steal from other retailers. He read about self-service variety stores operating in Minnesota. At the time, the standard model for variety stores involved clerks fetching items for customers from behind counters. It was slow, labor-intensive, and required more employees. Self-service meant customers could browse the shelves themselves, pick up what they wanted, and bring it to a checkout counter at the front. Fewer employees, faster service, lower costs. Sam took an overnight bus to Pipestone and Worthington, Minnesota, to see these stores for himself. He studied everything, the shelf layouts, the checkout process, the traffic flow. Then he came back to Bentonville and implemented what he had learned. Walton's 5 and 10 became the third self-service variety store in the entire nation and the first in Arkansas. Sam was already a decade ahead of his competition. Over the next 12 years, Sam and his brother Bud, who had joined the business after the war, built a small empire. By 1962, they operated 15 or 16 stores across Arkansas, Missouri, and Kansas. It was the largest chain of independently owned variety stores in America. But Sam wasn't satisfied. He saw something bigger coming. The birth of Walmart. The discount store concept was exploding in the early 1960s. Large stores offering brand-name merchandise at below traditional prices were popping up in cities across America. Sam studied them obsessively. He tried to convince the Ben Franklin executives to help him open discount stores. They refused. The margins were too thin, they said. The model wouldn't work. Sam tried to partner with other established retailers. They all said no. Nobody wanted to gamble on discount stores in small towns. The conventional wisdom was absolute. Discount stores needed large populations to generate enough volume. Towns under 50,000 people couldn't support them. So Sam decided to prove everyone wrong himself. On July 2nd, 1962, the first Walmart opened at 719 West Walnut Street in Rogers, Arkansas. The store was 16,000 square feet. More than 500 customers waited outside before the doors opened. The opening didn't go entirely smoothly. Sam had arranged for a promotional donkey to attract attention. The donkey left droppings in the aisles. It became part of company folklore, a reminder that even legends have messy beginnings. The name Walmart combined Walton with Mart. Sam's assistant Bob Bogle is sometimes credited with suggesting the combination. Sam liked it because it was short and would cost less for signage. Even the name reflected his obsession with eliminating unnecessary expenses. Here's the thing that gets forgotten about 1962. Walmart wasn't alone. That same year, 4 major discount chains launched within months of each other. Kmart opened its first store in March, Target opened in May, Woolco opened in June, Walmart opened in July. It was a race and Walmart started in dead last place. By 1967, Kmart had 250 stores generating $800 million in annual sales. Target was expanding rapidly through the upper Midwest. Woolco had the backing of the mighty Woolworths Corporation. Walmart had 24 stores and $12 million in sales. On paper, Sam Walton was irrelevant, just another regional player who would eventually get crushed by the national chains. But Sam had a strategy that seemed insane to the experts. While Kmart and Target fought over cities and suburbs, Sam went where no one else wanted to go. Towns under 10,000 people. Towns under 5,000. Places so small that putting a large store there looked like financial suicide. Sam understood something his competitors missed. In a city, customers have options. They can shop at multiple stores and compare prices. In a small town, if you're the only game around, you get everyone's business. And rural customers were just as hungry for low prices as urban ones, maybe hungrier. He also understood that small towns meant lower costs. Real estate was cheaper, labor was cheaper, and he didn't need to spend money on advertising. In a town of 3,000 people, everyone would know about the new Walmart within a week. The competitive obsession. Sam Walton didn't just run his business, he was consumed by it, and he was consumed by understanding what his competitors were doing. He later claimed that he spent more time walking through Kmart stores than any Kmart executive. He would visit competitor locations constantly, studying their layouts, checking their prices, examining their displays. He carried a tape recorder everywhere, dictating observations as he walked the aisles. His competitors thought he was a nuisance. Managers would sometimes spot Sam Walton in their stores, clearly taking notes, and they didn't know what to do about it. He wasn't stealing anything. He was just watching, learning, planning. Sam also flew his own planes. He eventually owned 19 different aircraft over his career. He would fly over potential store locations, tilting on the wing to count cars in competitors' parking lots. He could estimate a store's sales volume just by looking at how full the lot was at different times of day. When executives from Kmart and Sears visited Bentonville in those early years, they saw Walmart as too small to matter. Sam was so eager to learn from them that they openly shared their merchandising secrets, their distribution strategies, their expansion plans. Sam sat there with his yellow notepad, scribbling down everything they said. Years later, he would use those exact strategies against them. In 1983, after having dinner with Saul Price, the founder of Price Club warehouse stores, Sam came back to Arkansas and immediately copied the concept. Sam's Club launched that same year. Sam was never too proud to borrow a good idea. The systems that changed everything. But Sam's real genius wasn't just copying competitors. It was building systems they couldn't easily replicate. While Kmart and other chains outsourced their distribution, Sam built his own warehouses. He developed a hub and spoke system adapted from the airline industry. Walmart stores clustered around regional distribution centers. Each center could resupply every store within a day's drive. This created a massive advantage. Sam could stock his shelves faster and more efficiently than anyone else. When something sold out, replacement inventory arrived within 24 hours. His competitors might take a week. He also pioneered cross-docking, a technique where products from suppliers were unloaded from incoming trucks and immediately loaded onto outgoing trucks heading to stores. The merchandise never sat in a warehouse. It just passed through. This eliminated storage costs and got products to shelves faster. By 1987, Walmart had the largest private satellite communication system in the United States, bigger than what the federal government operated. Every store was connected to headquarters in real time. Sam could see what was selling in any location, identify trends, and respond immediately. This was decades before most retailers had anything similar. While competitors relied on weekly or monthly reports, Sam had live data flowing into Bentonville constantly. The Saturday morning meetings became legendary in corporate America. They started in 1962 because Sam felt guilty taking weekends off while his store clerks worked the busiest shopping day. He figured if they had to work Saturdays, so should he. Sam would arrive at the office between 2 and 3 in the morning to review sales data. When his executives arrived, they would gather to discuss what was working, what wasn't, and what needed to change. Problems got solved immediately. Phone calls were made during the meeting. Decisions were implemented that same day. By the time Walmart's competitors received their Monday morning numbers, Walmart had already analyzed the previous week and made adjustments. Sam was always operating faster than anyone else. In 1975, Sam visited a tennis ball factory in Korea. He watched the workers perform company cheers and do group calisthenics at the start of their shifts. He thought it was ridiculous, and then he thought about how it might build team spirit. He brought the idea back to Arkansas. The Walmart cheer was born. Give me a W, give me an A, give me an L. How about a squiggly? Employees wiggle their hips for the hyphen. Give me an M, A, R, T. What's that spell? Walmart. Who's number one? The customer. It sounds corny. It is corny. But it also created a sense of shared identity among employees across thousands of stores. The cheer still happens at shift changes and training sessions around the world. The debt crisis. By 1969, Sam had a problem. The stores were expanding faster than the profits could support. He had borrowed from every bank in Arkansas and southern Missouri. He was juggling loans, borrowing from one institution to pay another. The growth was real, but so was the debt. If anything went wrong, if sales dipped or a recession hit, the whole thing could collapse. His wife Helen didn't want to go public. She valued their privacy. She worried about what outside shareholders might demand. She had married a small-town store owner, not a corporate CEO answering to Wall Street. But Sam was out of options. Private capital couldn't sustain the growth he envisioned. On October 1st, 1970, Walmart sold 300,000 shares to the public at $16.50 each, raising approximately $5 million. Sam later described the flight back from New York after the IPO as one of the greatest feelings of his entire life. The weight of personal debt was gone. He never borrowed against his own assets again. The stock was listed on the New York Stock Exchange on August 25, 1972. By then, shares had already quadrupled in value. The company opened 6 stores the first year after going public, then 13 again, then 14, then 26. Walmart hit $1 billion in annual sales by 1980. No retailer in history had grown that fast. The Walmart effect. As Walmart expanded through the 1980s and 1990s, something became increasingly clear to the small towns that welcomed those big box stores. Main Street was dying. The math was brutal and simple. Walmart bought in quantities that small stores couldn't match. A local hardware store might order 500 hammers a year. Walmart ordered 5 million. The manufacturer gave Walmart a better price per hammer because of the volume. This meant Walmart could sell that hammer at a price below what the local store paid to acquire it. The local store could match Walmart's retail price, but they would lose money on every sale. Or they could keep their prices higher and watch customers drive to the Walmart on the edge of town. Neither option led to survival. Small retailers tried to compete on service, on knowledge, on relationships built over decades. Sometimes it worked for a while, but eventually the price difference became too large. Customers might feel guilty about abandoning the local store, but they also had bills to pay. When Walmart offered the same product for 30% less, sentiment lost. Studies documented what became known as the Walmart effect. Within 5 years of a Walmart opening, small towns saw significant portions of their downtown businesses close. Hardware stores, clothing stores, toy stores, pharmacies, sporting goods shops. One by one, they went dark. The Walmart defenders argued this was simply capitalism working as intended. More efficient businesses replaced less efficient ones. Consumers benefited from lower prices. The total value created exceeded the value destroyed. The critics pointed out that those inefficient businesses had provided middle-class livelihoods. Store owners who had served their communities for generations were reduced to working as Walmart greeters. The money that used to circulate within the local economy now flowed to Bentonville, Arkansas. Sam Walton acknowledged none of this as his fault. He saw himself as serving customers. If customers chose Walmart over the local store, that was the market speaking. He was giving people what they wanted. But what happens when what people want as consumers conflicts with what they need as workers and community members? Sam never really engaged with that question. The war on workers. The most controversial aspect of Walmart's business model was always labor. Sam Walton's philosophy was straightforward. Keep costs low on everything, including wages. Pass those savings to customers. If employees didn't like the pay, they could work somewhere else. The problem was that in many of the small towns where Walmart operated, there wasn't anywhere else. Walmart had often driven the other employers out of business. When the Retail Clerks International Union tried to organize workers at 2 Walmart stores in Missouri in 1972, Sam responded aggressively. He hired John Tate, an attorney who specialized in keeping unions out of workplaces. Tate's philosophy was not subtle. He reportedly called unions blood-sucking parasites living off the productive labor of people who work for a living. His tactics included mandatory meetings where workers heard anti-union messages, delays in the election process, and careful monitoring of any organizing activity. These tactics became standard Walmart doctrine. Over the following decades, the company fought unionization with remarkable intensity and near-total success. The most dramatic example came in February 2000. Meat cutters at a Walmart supercenter in Jacksonville, Texas, voted 7-3 to join the United Food and Commercial Workers Union. It was the first successful union vote in Walmart's American history. 2 weeks later, Walmart announced it was eliminating meat cutting operations at 180 stores across 6 states. The company would switch entirely to pre-packaged meat from suppliers. All meat cutter positions were eliminated. Walmart insisted the decision had absolutely nothing to do with the union vote. It was simply a business efficiency measure that had been planned for a long time. The National Labor Relations Board didn't believe them. After years of litigation, a federal appeals court, including future Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh, upheld the NLRB's finding that Walmart had violated labor law. But by then, the message was clear. Vote for a union, lose your job. The meat cutters in Jacksonville learned their positions could disappear overnight. Workers at other stores learned not to try. A 2020 Government Accountability Office report analyzed which companies employed the most workers receiving public assistance. Walmart appeared among the top employers of food stamp and Medicaid recipients in every single state studied. The numbers were staggering. Over 14,000 Walmart workers received food stamps across just 9 states. Some analyses estimated that $6 billion in public assistance flows to Walmart's low-wage workforce every year. Critics framed this as a hidden subsidy. Walmart kept wages low, and taxpayers made up the difference through food stamps, Medicaid, and housing assistance. The everyday low prices were partly funded by the government. Walmart responded that it provided jobs to people who might otherwise be unemployed. It offered advancement opportunities. Many store managers had started as hourly workers. The company was doing more good than harm. Both sides had data to support their arguments. The debate never really got resolved. It just continued, year after year, as Walmart kept growing. The Mexico bribery scandal. In the early 2000s, Walmart de Mexico was expanding at a ferocious pace. New stores were opening across the country, sometimes in locations that seemed impossible to permit. Starting around 2002, Walmart's Mexican subsidiary allegedly paid at least $24 million in bribes to government officials. The payments bought zoning changes, construction permits, and the smoothing of various bureaucratic obstacles. Some of the bribes were almost absurdly brazen. $52,000 to alter a zoning map, $81,000 in a donation that cleared the way for construction near the ancient pyramids of Teotihuacan, payments to officials in town after town, greasing the path for Walmart's expansion. In September 2005, a Walmart de Mexico executive named Sergio Cicero Zapata became a whistleblower. He provided detailed evidence to Walmart's headquarters in Bentonville, including names, dates, amounts, and the systems used to conceal the payments. Walmart's internal investigators began looking into the allegations. Their initial findings were damning. They recommended a full-scale investigation involving outside counsel and, potentially, disclosure to the Department of Justice. That's when the investigation stopped. In February 2006, top Walmart executives shut down the internal probe. They transferred responsibility for the investigation to the very lawyer in Mexico who was allegedly at the center of the bribery scheme. It was like asking the suspect to investigate himself. The executive identified as the driving force behind years of bribery, Eduardo Castro Wright, was not fired. He was not demoted. In 2008, he was promoted to vice chairman of Walmart. The scandal stayed buried until April 2012, when the New York Times published a massive investigation by reporter David Barstow. The story documented the bribery, the cover-up, and the promotion of those responsible. Barstow won a Pulitzer Prize for his reporting. The legal consequences came slowly. In June 2019, Walmart finally reached a settlement with the Securities and Exchange Commission and the Department of Justice. The company paid $283 million in penalties. But that figure understates the true cost. Including legal fees, compliance programs, and investigation expenses, Walmart spent over $1.3 billion dealing with the Mexico bribery scandal, and the executives who had orchestrated and covered up the scheme never faced personal criminal charges. The factories overseas, the consequences of Walmart's relentless pressure on prices extended far beyond American borders. To meet Walmart's demands for ever cheaper merchandise, suppliers squeezed their costs wherever they could. Often, that meant moving production to countries with lower wages and weaker regulations. Bangladesh, Cambodia, Vietnam, China. The workers in these factories existed largely outside the consciousness of American consumers. They didn't appear on receipts. Their working conditions weren't displayed on product tags. They were invisible, except when disasters made them briefly visible. On November 24, 2012, a fire broke out at the Tazreen Fashions factory in Dhaka, Bangladesh. The factory produced clothing for Walmart and other Western brands. The fire killed 117 workers. Survivors described exits that were blocked or locked. They described managers who told them to keep sewing even as smoke filled the building. They described jumping from windows to escape the flames. Investigators found that the factory had never been properly inspected. Fire safety systems were inadequate or non-existent. Workers had essentially been trapped in a death trap producing cheap clothes for American consumers. Less than 5 months later, on April 24, 2013, the Rana Plaza building collapsed in Dhaka. It housed 5 garment factories supplying Western brands. The collapse killed 1,132 people. It remains the deadliest disaster in the history of the garment industry. Rescue workers pulled bodies from the rubble for weeks. In the aftermath, 190 clothing brands signed the Accord on Fire and Building Safety in Bangladesh. The Accord committed them to independent inspections, required safety upgrades, and transparent reporting. Walmart refused to sign. The company argued it had its own safety programs that were adequate. Critics noted that Walmart's own safety programs had failed to prevent merchandise from being produced in the very factories that burned and collapsed. This was the cost that never appeared on the receipt. Somewhere along the supply chain that delivered everyday low prices to American consumers, workers died, lots of them, and the companies that profited from their labor could argue, with varying degrees of plausibility, that they weren't directly responsible. The billionaire in a pickup truck. And yet, despite building an empire that generated billions in annual profits, Sam Walton himself lived with remarkable frugality. For most of his adult life, Sam drove a 1979 Ford F-150 pickup truck. No air conditioning, coffee-stained seats, bird dogs in the back. This was a man who was ranked as the richest person in America for most of the 1980s, driving a vehicle that his own employees might have considered too beat up. "Why do I drive a pickup truck?" Sam once asked. "What am I supposed to haul my dogs around in? A Rolls-Royce?" That truck now sits in the Walmart Museum in Bentonville. Employees reportedly line up at shareholder meetings to touch the door handle, believing it somehow transfers the gift of frugality. Sam lived in the same modest house in Bentonville for decades, 2,400 square feet. Original 1950s, linoleum on the floors, wallpaper that hadn't been updated in years. When visitors expected to see a mansion, they found something that looked like it belonged to a middle manager, not a billionaire. He bought his clothes at Walmart. He got $5 haircuts at the barber shop on the town square. According to his son, Sam flew first class exactly once in his entire life, and he felt guilty about it afterward. Some people saw this as admirable, a man who stayed true to his values despite unimaginable wealth, a reminder that money doesn't have to change who you are. Others saw something darker, a man so obsessed with not wasting money that he couldn't enjoy any of it, a pathology dressed up as virtue, and perhaps more troublingly, a man who applied this same obsession to his workers, expecting them to sacrifice while he accumulated billions. In 1984, Sam made a bet with his employees. If Walmart achieved an 8% profit margin, he would dance the hula on Wall Street wearing a grass skirt. They hit the target. Sam kept his word. Footage of a billionaire doing the hula in front of investment bankers became a defining image of his unconventional leadership style. He was willing to embarrass himself for morale. He was willing to look foolish if it motivated his team. Whether that made up for the low wages and union busting was a question each employee had to answer for themselves. Death and the richest family on earth. In 1982, doctors diagnosed Sam with hairy cell leukemia, a cancer of the blood. Treatment put the disease into remission, but it would return. In 1990, during a hunting trip, Sam fell and hurt his hip. The subsequent medical examination revealed something worse. He had developed multiple myeloma, a cancer of the bone marrow. The disease was incurable. Sam underwent treatment at MD Anderson Cancer Center in Houston. Radiation and chemotherapy bought him time, but everyone knew the end was coming. On March 17, 1992, President George H.W. Bush awarded Sam Walton the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the nation's highest civilian honor. The ceremony was held in Bentonville because Sam was too sick to travel to Washington. Bush flew to Arkansas instead. 3 weeks later, on April 5, 1992, Sam Walton died at the University of Arkansas Medical Sciences Hospital in Little Rock. He was 74 years old. According to his family, Sam was reviewing sales data in his hospital bed just days before his death. Even at the end, he couldn't stop working, couldn't stop analyzing, couldn't stop looking for ways to sell more and spend less. His autobiography, Made in America, co-written with Fortune editor John Huey, was published the same year. It presented Sam's version of events, heavy on folksy wisdom and light on the controversies that critics had raised. At the time of his death, the Walton family fortune totaled approximately $23 to $25 billion, divided among family trusts Sam had established decades earlier. Tax planning had ensured the wealth would pass efficiently to the next generation. Today, Walmart generates $681 billion in annual revenue. The company employs 2.1 million people across nearly 11,000 stores in 19 countries. 3 of Sam's children, Jim, Rob, and Alice Walton each individually exceed $100 billion in net worth. They rank among the 10 richest people on the planet. Their combined family fortune stands at approximately $475 to $500 billion. That is more wealth than any other family in human history, more than the Rothschilds accumulated over 2 centuries of banking, more than the Rockefellers controlled at the height of Standard Oil, more than the GDP of Poland, Sweden, and Belgium combined. The farm boy who watched his father repossess homes during the Depression created a dynasty that will shape American commerce for generations to come. What it all means. Sam Walton's story defies simple categories. He was a genuine innovator who transformed how America shops. He was also a ruthless competitor who destroyed countless livelihoods without apparent remorse. He preached frugality and lived it personally. He also built a system that kept millions of workers in poverty while his family accumulated more wealth than most nations possess. He claimed to serve customers above all else. But customers are also workers and community members and human beings whose lives are shaped by more than just the price of goods at checkout. The debate about Walmart is really a debate about what kind of economy we want. Is efficiency the ultimate value? Should the market determine outcomes regardless of how those outcomes distribute costs and benefits? Or are there other considerations like community stability, worker dignity, and local economic resilience that should constrain the pursuit of lower prices? Sam Walton never really engaged with these questions. He had a simple philosophy: give customers what they want at the lowest possible price. Everything else was someone else's problem. Whether that philosophy represents American ingenuity at its finest or American capitalism at its most destructive depends entirely on where you're standing. If you're a customer stretching a paycheck to feed your family, Walmart is a lifeline. Those everyday low prices mean your kids eat a little better, your bills get paid, your life is slightly less desperate. If you ran a hardware store on Main Street until 1995, Walmart is a tragedy. The business your grandfather started, the customers you served for decades, the livelihood that gave your life meaning. All gone, replaced by a big box store on the edge of town that doesn't know your name. If you work at Walmart today, your perspective probably depends on your position. Managers who started as cashiers might see opportunity. Hourly workers struggling to get enough hours to qualify for benefits might see something else. But one thing is undeniable. A farm boy born into poverty during the Great Depression built the largest company the world has ever seen. He changed how 300 million Americans shop. He changed how global supply chains operate. He changed the balance of power between retailers and manufacturers. And that 1979 Ford pickup truck is still sitting in Bentonville, waiting for someone else to try and do it again. If you found this story as complicated as I did, you might want to see what happened when another American tried to build an empire using the same playbook in a completely different industry. That video is on screen now. Subscribe if you want more stories about the businesses that shaped the modern world, for better and for worse. I'll see you in the next one.